You wake up tired. Not physically tired, something deeper. A bone-level exhaustion that no amount of sleep can touch. And somewhere beneath the noise of your day, a quiet, relentless question appears. Is this actually me? Most people assume this feeling is burnout or depression. Carl Jung believed it was something far more precise. Your psyche sending an emergency signal that the identity you are performing is not the identity you actually are. We live in an era of historically unprecedented freedom. And yet, self-alienation, the experience of feeling like a stranger inside your own life, has become a systemic crisis. The mask you're wearing isn't a flaw, it was survival. But it has now become a prison. This is not a philosophical abstraction. In 2026, approximately 40% of working adults are grappling with clinical or subclinical burnout. Not tiredness, the complete collapse of who they believed they were. And 70% of high achievers quietly suspect they are frauds. Imposter syndrome is not a weakness. It is your ego accurately perceiving its own split. The gut-wrenching recognition that the world is applauding a collective mask, while the authentic self remains completely invisible, unacknowledged, and slowly starving. The psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott discovered that the false self is not chosen. It is built in childhood as a desperate survival mechanism. A terrified child learning that love is conditional begins to perform rather than live. And the performance, once rewarded, becomes the only self it knows. Carl Jung called this structure the persona, the mask of the collective psyche. It is not inherently dangerous. Every functional human wears one. The catastrophe arrives at the moment the ego forgets it is wearing a mask at all. That moment of forgetting is where you lose yourself. And as the mask grows heavier, something critical happens underground. Every instinct, desire, and truth that contradicts the performance gets pushed into the shadow. The psychic basement, where everything you dare not be accumulates, silently, gathering force. The psychologist Pierre named this process the lowering of the mental level. The immense cognitive energy required to maintain an inauthentic performance slowly drains the mind's capacity to hold itself together. The system begins to fracture in sudden rages, emotional collapses, or a spreading, inexplicable numbness. To see this crisis in its most concentrated form, consider elite athletes. A landmark study tracking 138 retiring professionals across 28 sports found something extraordinary. After they stopped competing, their rate of anxiety and depression was more than twice that of the general population. And why? Because sports organizations recruit children at increasingly young ages, foreclosing their identity before it can develop. The child never explores who else they might be. The athlete becomes their sport entirely. When the sport ends, there is nothing beneath the uniform, nothing at all. Research by Dr. Francesca Cavalerio identified 3 distinct narrative paths these athletes take when their persona collapses. These 3 paths don't just describe athletes, they describe every human being who has ever watched their primary identity disappear. And one of them almost certainly describes you. The first path, the entangled narrative. These individuals remain completely defined by their former role. Their inner story is, I was a champion. I am no longer a champion. I want to be a champion again. Without alternative identities to anchor to, they drift for years in a disoriented, nowhere land. The second path is liminal, suspended between past and future, terrified to commit. The third, the only path that leads forward, belongs to those who built multiple identities before the collapse. They were always more than their title. And when the title fell, they were still standing. The psychologist Marcia identified 4 identity states every human cycles through. diffusion, foreclosure, moratorium, and achievement. Longitudinal data show that identity foreclosure, the unconscious, unquestioned adoption of an assigned role, peaks sharply at age 36, then either transforms or calcifies. But here is what the psychology alone cannot explain. Why, when you know your identity is a cage, is it nearly impossible to escape it? Why does the brain resist the very change that would set you free? To answer that, we have to go inside your skull. And what the science shows there is genuinely disturbing. Inside your brain, there is a vast neural network that activates whenever you are not focused on the external world. Neuroscientists call it the default mode network, your brain's internal storytelling engine. It is the architect of your identity, and under the wrong conditions, it becomes your warden. Researchers Marie Levorsen and Ryuta Aoki used fMRI brain scanning to crack the most fundamental mystery of identity. How does the brain actually store the concept of self? And what they discovered overturns everything we assumed. Your brain does not store a list of who you are. It stores a hierarchy of what matters about who you are. The MPFC, the brain's core self-referential hub, only activates systematically for traits that are not merely descriptive, but central, important. A trait can describe you without defining you. But the moment a role becomes your core important structure, the brain begins to protect it like a vital organ. Remove it, and you experience something close to death. When the identity you perform contradicts your internal wiring, the brain's anterior cingulate cortex registers a constant, low-grade error signal, like a smoke alarm that can never quite locate the fire. The default mode network begins to hyperactivate, and then the rumination loop begins, and it does not stop. Under chronic identity captivity, the default mode network does something catastrophic. It fails to deactivate. When you try to focus on work, it intrudes. When you try to enjoy a meal, it intrudes. When you lie down to sleep, it activates with terrible precision, replaying your fraudulence in high definition. Now, here is the most counterintuitive and disturbing finding in the psychology of identity. William Swann's research demonstrates that when you hold a negative self-view, when you believe you are inadequate or fraudulent, your brain will actively reject any evidence that proves otherwise. It prefers the familiar pain to the unknown freedom. Swann called this ontological security, the brain's desperate need for a stable, predictable model of reality. Even when that model is built on suffering, a negative self-view at least feels coherent, familiar, and trustworthy. Success, by contrast, feels like a foreign land without a map, and the brain interprets foreign as dangerous. The psychologist E. Torrey Higgins discovered that human emotional suffering is precisely generated by specific structural gaps between the self you are and the selves you believe you should or could be. Two distinct gaps, two entirely different emotional families, and both are quietly destroying you in different ways. The gap between who you are and who you dream of being generates the dejection family. Depression, lethargy, disappointment. The gap between who you are and who others demand you be generates the agitation family. Anxiety, guilt, and chronic fear. Most people suffering identity captivity are trapped in both gaps simultaneously. And now the digital era has added a third dimension of captivity. Research identifies two behaviors that lock individuals in an online identity trap. Lying behaviors. Actively fabricating an idealized digital self. And liking behaviors. Engaging with content you don't actually believe to secure social approval. Both are powered by a single engine, the fear of negative evaluation. To measure the distance between the performed self and the authentic self, researchers at the University of Manchester developed a tripartite model of authenticity. 3 dimensions: self-alienation, not knowing yourself; authentic living, behaving in alignment with your true values; and acceptance of external influence, conforming to others' expectations. Identity captivity is the precise combination of the first and the third. When the brain processes positive self-views, it engages a rich, expansive network: creativity, social connection, executive control, all working together. But in negative, self-alienated states, the network collapses into a tight, isolated cluster. Just the default mode network, the visual cortex, and the attention system, all turned entirely inward, feeding only on suffering. An identity captivity does not only damage you. When your own self-representation is distorted and hollow, your brain's capacity to simulate and understand other people is severely compromised. The mirror neuron system, your neurological bridge to other human beings, loses its signal. And you find yourself becoming inexplicably isolated, even in crowds. The consequences of leaving this neural system unchecked are not merely emotional. A professional who experiences a severe burnout-induced career collapse faces an estimated lifetime financial burden exceeding £4.1 million, driven by income loss, a permanent 70% reduction in future earning potential, healthcare costs, and pension shortfalls. Identity captivity has a price tag, and here is perhaps the most chilling finding. If the social environment continuously rewards your inauthentic performance, promotions, applause, love, the MPFC gradually incorporates the performed behaviors into its baseline self-concept. The mask stops feeling like a mask. Inauthenticity becomes neurologically who you are. The cage is now built from the inside. So the mask has been built. The cage has been wired into the brain. The question is no longer why you are trapped. The question is, what actually works to get out? Not therapy that takes decades, not affirmations that the brain ignores. Something neurologically precise. Something that changes the PFC's self-concept model directly. And it exists. Before the protocol, understand why passive introspection, reading self-help books, and repeating affirmations fail. The MPFC encodes self-concept in terms of experiential self-importance. What the brain has actually witnessed you do. Thoughts are not evidence. The brain requires behavioral proof. You cannot think your way out of an identity. You must act your way out. The psychologist Daryl discovered something that permanently inverts how we think about identity change. You do not act because of who you are. You become who you are by watching what you do. The causal arrow runs in reverse. When the brain observes new, freely chosen behaviors, it is neurologically forced to rewrite its self-concept to match them. Identity follows action, always. Step 1 of the protocol. Separate your values from your inheritance. The psychologist Shalom Schwartz mapped 10 universal human values. Ask yourself, which of these were chosen by you, and which were installed by your parents, your institution, or your culture? The identity you're living may not belong to you at all. It may belong to someone long dead who never asked your permission. Step 2. James Pennebaker's Expressive Writing Protocol. Write about your most emotionally difficult turning points for 15 to 20 minutes per day, for 3 to 5 sessions. This is not journaling. This is neurological restructuring. Pennebaker's research demonstrates that this specific process transforms fragmented, chaotic shadow material into a coherent, integrated life narrative, rewiring the default mode network from prison to home. Step 3, and the one that changes everything: confronting the shadow. Examine your most intense, irrational reactions to other people. the colleagues you irrationally despise, the qualities you find most insufferable in others. Jung's insight is devastating. Whatever you cannot tolerate in them is the precise trait you have most ruthlessly exiled in yourself. Integration retrieves the energy, and the energy is enormous. And the data confirms this works. In the athlete study, the intervention group, who underwent structured narrative therapy and values redesign, showed a 23% reduction in cortisol levels over 12 months, 41% lower depression scores among the physically active, and accelerated normalization of heart rate variability. Their autonomic nervous systems rewired themselves as their identities did. For those who go deeper still, Jung mapped 4 stages of what he called the Anima and Animus, the inner contrasexual guide that bridges the conscious ego to the deepest layer of the self. Eve, Helen, Mary, Sophia. Each stage is not merely personal growth. Each represents a fundamental shift in where you believe wisdom lives, outside you or within. The Sophia stage is not enlightenment in the way self-help sells it. It is the moment wisdom stops being borrowed from teachers, partners, or traditions, and becomes directly lived within the self. The projections onto others collapse inward. You stop needing to be rescued, and a very specific, extraordinary shift occurs: the death of hope. And this is not despair, this is freedom. In this stage, the cessation of projection occurs. You see the people in your life as they actually are, not as the screen onto which you have been projecting your unlived potential, your unmet needs, and your unresolved wounds. Parents become human, partners become people, authority figures lose their magic and their tyranny. You quietly reclaim everything you once handed away. But Jung issued a severe warning about this stage, perhaps the most important warning in all of depth psychology. When the ego integrates deep, powerful, unconscious archetypes, it becomes dangerously susceptible to inflation. The ego commits the narcissistic error of believing it is the source of wisdom, rather than merely its vessel. This is the mana personality trap, and it destroys more spiritual seekers than anything else. The resolution is not to retreat into isolation. Jung insisted the ego must remain in conscious, humble service to the self, and then re-engage with the human community from a position of absolute humility and chosen, compassionate connection. Not as a guru, not as a teacher, as what he called cultural medicine, a single, integrated person in a world of unconscious performing. That is sufficient. That is everything. So let us return to where we began. That bone-deep exhaustion, that quiet question in the early morning, is this actually me? That question is not a symptom of your brokenness. It is the first honest signal from your authentic self. The self has been sending that signal for years. The question is, are you finally ready to listen? The mask was never the enemy. It was a child's most ingenious survival tool. The shadow was never the enemy. It was the treasure chest of everything too alive and authentic to be allowed in public. The cage was built from rewards that punished the real self. And the exit is never where you thought it was. It is never a new identity. It is the excavation of the one you buried. You came here wondering why you feel trapped in the wrong identity. You leave knowing that the trap was never external. It was neurological, psychological, and constructed layer by layer with extraordinary care. Which means the exit was always available. The question was never, can I change? The question Carl Jung spent his entire life answering was, will you finally have the courage to become who you already are?